Pat, thank you so much for joining me today on the show. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I am Pat Watson. I am a author, blogger, podcaster. I run a company training people in tactical lock picking or covert entry. I also have a company where we specialize in family protection dogs. Uh, and I really thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing now. And I learned a lot over the course of my 10, 11 years-ish in local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, and in the military. And I wanted to take the lessons that I learned from those places and share them. And it's really tough to teach freely when you're in those professions. Even within those professions, there's just so much red tape and bureaucracy that you're often prevented from giving people the best possible training. So here I am, a few years out of the military and out of law enforcement, running my own companies and living in Texas and just helping people the best that I can.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate that because I see a lot of people like yourself. They are in a government job and they say, hey, there's just so much more that needs to be done. Talk to me a little bit more about the decision to leave,
Mhm.
federal employment, which is a good job, and stepping out on your own and doing this by yourself.
Oh, sure. Yeah, many layers to that. Um, One of them was I became very frustrated in that system. I even wrote a book about it. It's the four-letter F word. Bureaucracy is the title. Um, I got very frustrated in that I wanted to make every unit, every team, every operation better and better, and I was stopped at every turn from my supervisors. This is something that if you've ever served in public service, you'll know that this is the case. So I went down that rabbit hole and I tried to explore why is this happening? It's not that I'm so super great and I have all the answers, but everybody that has good ideas, good concepts, even when your bosses know that what you're doing is wrong and that we should be making that wrong right, you're just prevented from doing so. So I explored that rabbit hole. I had a shift in morality, so to speak. Um, and I thought that there was so much better I could do in life if I wasn't in those jobs anymore. That's all. It's a tough job. It's a very, very poor system to be a part of. It takes a lot out of your soul. So that was one of the biggest reasons to leave, is that I needed more in life. And it's so very restrictive there.
Yeah, and I understand that. And you do so much so well. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about on the show that I think that you do that is unique, that not a whole lot of other people do, is that you actually work on training canines for protection for family. It's not necessarily canines for government jobs, it's canines for people like you and me. So like give me kind of an overview of what it's like to have your own canine protection training.
Sure. I actually own a franchise of the Fortress K9 company. I just call it a different name for social media. That makes it really easy to have
Mhm.
separate accounts running. But my branding is K9 Philosophy, is what I've called my franchise. So I use the Fortress K9 method. And Joel Riles over in the Orlando, Florida area, he has his kind of headquarters company. And the way I connected with him was I heard him on another podcast long ago. And then I left both my military and my law enforcement job, started my own podcast, and then I said, "Oh, I should have someone on to talk about dogs." And I remembered hearing this guy's voice. I reached out to him, and I discovered that he was right around the corner, like just a couple-hour drive away. So I went out to his facility. I talked to him on the interview, went out to his facility, and as soon as I talked to him on the interview, I I resonated with his principles and his training philosophy. And the first thing that grabbed me was he said, we don't just take the law enforcement canine training method and copy it. And we don't just take the military training method and copy it. And he said that would be a bad idea. Those dogs do very separate, unique things. And we need our dogs to do separate, different things. So why would we use the same training? And I was like, well, yeah, duh. On top of another few layers of principles that he had. So I went out to the facility, and as soon as I stepped on his field, I knew that he was world class. Um, I remember I was never a big dog person. I had, little couch lap dogs when I was a kid with the family, but I never really was I had never worked with working dogs. And I go out to the field, and there's like 10 big, German Shepherd type breeds just roaming around, no leash, not tied out to anything, just walking around. So I get out of my car and I'm like, oh my God, these dogs are going to jump on me and they're attack dogs and I'm not going to know what to do and they're going to smell fear and they're going to kill me. I'm like, that's it. That's the end of my life.
Yeah, that's it
I
right
get out of
there.
my car. I walk over to Joel and the dogs just ignore my existence. And I'm
Mm,
like, huh. And one of the biggest compliments that Joel gets, as well as me now running a company, is it's not just impressive what our dogs do, it's what they don't do that's
mm,
impressive.
yeah.
So I knew as soon as I stepped on ground there that I was going to buy one of his dogs. And then I just dumped a ton of time and energy into training my first dog. And I had a knack for it. And I've been training humans at a very high level for about a decade. And so training dogs it wasn't, oh, I'm a new dog trainer. It's, oh, I teach people how to do stuff, and dogs are just another tool. So I was
Mm,
able to fold that into my envelope rather quickly, I think. I'm still on a journey. I'm still learning a lot, but um, it's been fascinating to me, and it's helped me hear a lot in my heart. It's helped me heal a lot. 11 years working for the government is a long time, and I actually am halfway through a draft. I just got halfway through last night on a book for the concept is, and Joel talks about this in his company. The concept is dogs are one of the best mirrors that you can use for yourself if you're willing to look. And I'll
okay.
give you a short example of that
Yeah,
if I'm
please.
still able to rabbit trail here.
Yeah, yeah.
So, because most people would agree that dogs love their humans unconditionally. They don't care if you're tall, short, fat, skinny, black, white, brown, purple. They don't even care if you're smelly. In fact, they probably love you more if you're smelly, which is great.
Right.
Um, they also, uh, it's something in their makeup and their design that when they wake up and when they have a person they're bonded to, they want to please that person. So if you believe those first two things to be true, then why is it that so many people still can't get their dogs to do what they want their dogs to do?
Okay.
It's the perfect setup. So if you want your dog to do something and you're starting with this perfect, awesome tool that's like ready to work for you, um, then what's the variable? And and our answer is, well, the variable is you, the dog handler, your dog. And we prove it all the time by a client coming out to the field with their dog and they say, my dog just won't do this thing. And we go, let me see the dog. And the dog does the thing. And we hand the dog back to the person. And they go, well, shit, now I have to, oh, sorry. They go, well,
That's
crap.
okay.
Now I
Yeah.
have to come up. Well, now I have to come up with another excuse, so it's not me. I have to make up an excuse that it could be anything but me, right? Not my fault. So we prove that. And the reason we can use dogs as a mirror to ourselves is because they don't lie. They live in the moment. They exist within the patterns that you set and the boundaries that you form. And if you do the hard work and you hold hard boundaries and you are consistent and you hold your dog to that standard, your dog will do the things. If you are slow and lazy and inconsistent and you're a mess, your dog will be those things too. Again, we prove this. You can take a messy dog and give it to us, and we will make it a better dog. So the variable is the human. What that means is just another layer is I look at my dog in the morning and I go, okay, let's go outside. And if I want my dog to walk right next to me, just put her shoulder right against my leg and we walk through the house together. We walk out the door together. We walk out in the field and then I tell her to go to the bathroom and she goes. If that's what I want, but about half of the time I'm like, yeah, I open my bedroom door, I just shoo her out. We get to the next door. She meets me there. I open the door, she shoos out on her own. She runs and does some circles. If I do that about half of the time, and then we're in public and I start realizing, half the time that we're walking together, she just kind of walks in front of me and like does a little spin. And I'm like, oh, as soon as I
Mm,
realize, hey, she's doing something that I don't want her to do, I immediately, if I'm willing to look, that's the key. If I see those things, I immediately have to look back at myself and go, how have I established this pattern for her?
mm,
So it's not just, oh, my dog is broken. It's, oh, I must have either encouraged or allowed this activity in the past and set this pattern for her. And so it's not necessarily a dog being disobedient. It's a dog going, well, half the time you just let me run around. So I'm just going to run around half the time. Um, so it's an indicator for me that, well, because I'm responsible for everything my dog does and fails to do, and because I've noticed that they're doing something I don't like, and because I know that that means that I have set a pattern where that's allowed, now I have the power to fix that.
mm.
So if I'm responsible for everything they do and they fail to do, that doesn't just mean responsible like I get in trouble when they fail. That also means I'm responsible, that I'm able to respond to that. So I'm able to make a positive change in my dog. And when you lock into that and then you realize, oh, that applies in other areas of my life too. Boom, my head explodes. It's amazing to be able to have that self kind of introspection every day in a little four-legged furry friend is really cool.
Yeah, man, that is fascinating. You have changed my mind on how I do things with my dogs just in the past like 2 minutes. So we can just wrap the show right now, and we'll just say goodbye. No, but seriously, that's fascinating. That is fascinating. So let me ask you, since you
Yeah.
train humans and you train dogs, which is
Yes.
easier? What's the better suited? Is it the dog or is it the human?
Oh, I love that question. So here's the weird answer. I'll try to keep it short. Um, when I train dogs, I'm not training dogs. I'm training humans. So
Okay.
even if you bring your dog to me and you drop it off and you leave, I'm still not training a dog. I'm training a human. The human is me.
Mm.
So I'm telling me how to make the dog do the thing. And the system that we use is very simple. It's basically mastering the basics and the basics of incentive and praise and correction and establishing a pattern. Those things are really easy. Um, hard to implement, but they're simple. So when you give me your dog, I can train your dog by way of my brain says, "Hey, Pat, make the dog do this." So I'm the trainee and the trainer at the same time. When you and your dog are both at the farm here and you're training with me, I'm telling you how to work with your dog. There's not much that I would directly teach your dog. I would just be doing things in a pattern and praising them when they do what we want more of and correcting them when we want less of them. Um, so to answer your question in a weird way, I very rarely train a dog to do something. I train the human always, whether it's me or another human, and we just give the dogs the proper incentive.
That is fascinating. I like all of your approaches there. There's a lot of people that think right now that their golden retriever is going to save them from like a hostile intruder or it's going to pull them out of a burning house. Is that a fair assumption for the average dog, living in a house in America?
Uh, it's it's weird. This is a concept that keeps popping up in my life. Imagine that we proved that there's a 99% chance that your dog will not protect you if they've never done protection training. If we've established that through sheer massive data, that thousands of people come out to the facility, they bring their dogs and they say, "Hey, my dog's really protective over me. Maybe I should do bite work." And we go, "Your dog's probably not going to protect you. Are you ready?" And they go, "Yeah." And we go, "We're going to get the bite suit on and we're going to attack you and we're just going to see what your dog does." And they go, "Okay." And we attack the human and we attack the dog and the dog runs and hides.
Mm,
If we can prove through massive sheer data that that is the case, it's about 99% failure rate for a dog to protect a human untrained. It's also fascinating that 100% of the people I talk to go, "Well, my dog's the exception. They'll protect me." And I go, it's just, it's odd to me that the massive overwhelming data says this is what's going to happen. And everybody thinks that they're that 1% exception, which is just, it's weird to me. But the data shows when we have people come out to the field with protective dogs, they will do protective things, but being protective and protecting are two different things.
mm,
So you can posture, you can bark, you can yell, you can point fingers like a human can point fingers, a dog can bark. They can snap in the air, they can lunge, but when the fight touches them, when the attacker gets close enough to touch the dog or hit the dog goes, "Oh, I'm still protective, but I really don't want to fight you." And they kind of do this lean in and out, or they'll just run and hide, or so there's lots of things you can do that look like protection, but they are not engaging a threat.
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's it kind of goes back to some other stuff that I've seen on our show. I had Pablo from AS3 driving drivers training on there, and he said, everybody who comes to our training thinks they're the best driver. They think they're a good driver, and they think it's always going to work out. And I think we put that onto our dogs as well. Maybe that comes from like watching too many episodes of Paw Patrol with your kid, or seeing Old Yeller when you were young, that you think, oh, my dog is automatically going to do this. But you're saying that that may not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, it's likely not the case, and that's okay. You don't have to. There's very good things that can come from a protective dog. And what we really like too is that our dogs, for the most part, are preventative measures. Um, we would much prefer that. We would much prefer that an attacker sees one of our dogs out there in public with their handler. They see the person and they go, "I'm feeling like I'm going to attack someone today." And they look at the person and they look at the dog and they go, "Nope," and they walk away. And I've seen that myself. I've been in some weird areas late at night, lots of people, big crowds, people just being goofballs. And I have seen, I remember one particular case, I think it was maybe Halloween or a big night like that. I was out of town and I was with my dog, Arrow, who is a protection dog for me and my medical service dog. And we're walking down the middle of the street and the streets are blocked off and there's police cars everywhere and there's people just roaming the streets. And every single restaurant or bar that we walk past had music blaring and people pouring out in the streets with their drinks. And I remember occasionally people would look over and go, "Oh, a dog." And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I know." And I remember this group of like maybe 10 or 12 college age guys, but like sports build, like just huge boulder shoulders. And then, they're smelling like like a perfume factory. And this large group is walking directly towards me and no one's paying attention. And I'm walking with my dog and I'm like, oh, and I could just, they're very rambunctious, like, oh, F this guy, F that guy. Oh, we're great.
Mm-hmm.
We're awesome. And I'm like, I just don't want to deal with that. And the first guy
Mm-hmm.
looks at me and stops and goes, oh. And then all 12 dudes go, nope. And they crossed the street and they went around me. And then they came back to my side of the street when me and the dog had passed. And it's just, so there is good things about a deterrent, and many dogs can be a deterrent. The cool thing, if you want to go up another level, is even if your attacker isn't introduced to the world of canine, a lot of people, I think, in their DNA, they know. So if you have a
Mm-hmm.
dog that's a big German Shepherd, your base level criminal might go, probably not worth it. But
Mm-hmm.
another criminal might go, yeah, look at that. The dog's kind of goofy, but I'm really desperate. And that same criminal might go, oh, that dog looks different. They're really sharp. They're very obedient. They're paying attention to me. Like they're poised and they're ready. And that owner is giving commands and that dog is crisp. Like I
Mm-hmm.
have goosebumps just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's a level of protection that stops the fight from happening in the first place. And that's incredibly valuable. I mean, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of pain, which is awesome.
Yes, absolutely. And I hate to say I have seen like videos of women who are this one particular one, I think it was in Atlanta, and this lady had a German Shepherd and she was in a crosswalk and two guys pull up in a car, they jump out, they mug her, the dog does nothing but get in the
Uh,
way and they jump back in. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I guess they saw nonverbal cues like you were just talking about coming from the dog that said, oh, this one's a goofball, it's probably not going to protect her like she thinks it does. And I know this is one particular case, but yeah, I mean, I've been out places and I have seen dogs that I know were trained, and I will stay far away from that sort of thing. I was recently at a doctor's appointment, and a couple came in, and a guy had, I guess, just like um, a situation where it was a dog that was there for, I think, just like emotional support, things like that. And everybody goes up to the dog and the pet says like, oh, I'm such a dog person, I'm a wonderful dog person, look at me, I love. That's got to drive you crazy as somebody who has like a protection dog in public.
yeah, it gets old. I've gotten better at managing it. It's let's see, how do I kind of dice that up? It's it's not a bad thing, and I don't think that people's intentions are bad. It's just dogs fill this weird niche in American society. I mean, we are the country of the dog.
Mm-hmm.
You can't swing a cat without hitting somebody that owns a dog in this country. Um, and the people treat dogs differently than they treat any other animal on earth. And for good reason. I think they're amazing with their bond that they have with humans. So I don't think people have bad intention, and it just I hear it so frequently that I hear people go, "Oh, look, a dog," and "Oh, pretty dog," and "Oh, I want to. Maybe I should pet his dog. Maybe I shouldn't." So I hear the people talking, and I try to ignore it, not in a bad way, but it gets kind of repetitive.
Sure.
But I've gotten much better with stopping interference with our literal medical tasks. She works for me, so we're working in public.
Right.
Um, Usually if someone approaches me and they have that look like, yeah, I'll it's better if I preempt and I just put my hand up and I'm nice and I say, I'm sorry, please don't pet my dog. She's working.
Hmm.
And I've practiced that a million times, and that stops 99% of people. And that 1% that gets through, they go, well, I still want to pet it. And, oh, it's so pretty. And your dog will love me. I just
Yeah.
get slightly more stern and I go, do not pet my dog. She is working. Leave us alone. And they go, oh, sorry. Um, sometimes I'll say, I'm not mad at you, but, please, the best thing you can do for us is to just let us be.
Hmm.
Very rare that I have to do that. Usually just, I'm sorry, she's working, and people are very polite.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
are, we're working very hard all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. And that's something definitely to look out for. It's just to look for that. Oh wait, this is definitely a working dog. I should probably respect what's going on here and let it go. Um, so let me ask you, like, can protection dogs coexist with a family, especially with like kids and young kids, or are they too dangerous to have around small children?
Awesome. Awesome question. Um, the first point is all dogs bite. Um, and I can make any dog bite me. If a dog has teeth, I can make that dog bite me, even if it's the best dog in the world. And if you're the owner and it's your best dog ever, and he's never bitten anyone, I can make your dog bite me, probably pretty quickly. So you have a responsibility to maintain and or to improve the level of stability in your dog. Stability meaning they don't bite when they're not supposed to. Um, Short answer is yes. We are a world-class company. Fortress Canine and the franchise that I run, world-class. And the number one thing that we market is it's two things that coexist at the top of our kind of important pyramid, but at the same time. And half of that is they must be not just able to bite a human on command, but actively engage in combat. And those are two different things that I'd like to get into. The other part of that half is they are incredibly safe and stable. So imagine if you were buying a new rifle and you go to the gun store and they go, like 10% of the time, the rifle barrel will like wrap around and shoot you in the arm on accident. That is not an asset. That's a liability.
Right.
No one would ever buy a rifle like that.
Right.
So we see dogs the same way. It doesn't matter how good your dog does at biting people. If they bite you and they bite a child and they bite a cat when they're not supposed to, you have a liability then. And people don't care about that. Sometimes people just get this drive and they go, I want a bite dog. And they get a bite dog and then, oh no, my dog bit someone. Why? So that's exactly what our company does is combat effective dogs that will fight a determined attacker, which is different than apprehending somebody.
Mm.
And our dogs are safe and stable around kids, around other pets, in public, when there's high stress, when there's strange weather, when we're crowded in buses. So the easiest way to see this for yourself is Joel and I both have really active Instagram and other accounts. So if you check out Fortress Canine on almost any platform, you'll see dozens, just hundreds of examples of that, and just daily stuff like, oh, we got a new cat today. Here's my protection dog. Here's the new cat crawling on top of my protection dog. It's amazing, and it's doable. And that's something I wanted to get into too, which is I'm glad we're not a police or military dog training company.
Hmm.
I've been in both of those fields, and I was never a police or military canine handler, but I worked alongside them a lot. Um, and I know that in that community, it's often seen as, I guess, just quote, part of doing business where your canine will bite you on accident or bite an
Hmm.
officer on accident. Um, and that's just, that's part of business. And that's a bureaucratic problem. It's not often that the officers don't care. It's not that they don't train hard. It's really a systemized, entrenched problem with, just that type of machine that you're a part of. Um, and so I wanted to talk about the difference between those dogs and a sport biting dog and what we do, which is a family protection dog, which in the
Sure.
title
Yeah.
should give you the answer. But
Right.
what military and police dogs do, not all of them, but a large majority of them, their job is to apprehend somebody.
Hmm.
Uh, and this is something that it's something I knew, but I didn't know that I know until someone said it a certain way to me, which was, um, imagine if it was something other than a dog, like it was a person or a weapon, and someone said to you, I don't want the fight. I'm running. I'm leaving. And you ran up to them and you beat the crap out of them. Well, that would be bullying. Um, or if someone said, I don't want the fight. I'm just hiding. Please leave me alone. And you ran up to them and you beat the crap out of them. That would be bullying. And no value judgment aside, I know that it's a very unique world, but that is what canine dogs do for police officers. They are apprehension dogs. They will find someone that's running away and they will stop them and hold them, or they will find someone that's hiding and they will grab them and either hold them there or pull them out and retrieve them. Again, value judgment aside, that's what those dogs do. So they're often biting someone who doesn't want the fight.
Right.
Sport protection dogs, they do very amazing work, and some of them do better towards the protection side, and some of them are more towards the score side. But some of the most very common videos you'll see if you search for sport biting dogs, and sometimes they're called protection dogs, which is inaccurate.
Okay. Okay.
Is the dogs they'll run up to the person in a suit and they'll bite like high up on the bicep, which is
Hmm.
like a specific target where the bite suit person has their hands not in a suit, their hands are not covered, and the dog will bite only one specific spot, and they'll bite really deep and really hard, and they'll hold on and they won't let go. And those dogs are trained intentionally so that if there's any distraction, like if you're hitting the dog with a stick, the dog doesn't let go. It just holds on until it dies. It's really amazing. And some of those dogs are really sharp. The
Hmm.
problem with that is if you are a 98-pound female and you buy a sport biting dog and you send your dog after one determined attacker and he bites that person in their arm and that person is determined, yeah, getting bit in the arm is going to really suck. But if they have a gun or a machete, they're going to shoot or slash your dog. And you'll see in these videos when the dog bites the person in the suit for these sport biting events, the person will walk around holding the dog up.
Yeah.
So, well, if someone's trying to close the distance to hurt you and you send the dog, the person can still close the distance and hurt you. And a lot of those videos too, they'll show these like young female handlers that walk up to the bad guy and they have to pull their dog off of the bad guy. So that's not smart either. Why would you want to
Exactly.
get within arm's reach of someone that
Exactly.
is trying to
Yeah.
kill you?
Right.
So what we do is very different than both of those things. And again, not picking a fight, not a value judgment.
Sure.
That is super cool that sport dogs do sport things. It's super cool that police dogs do police things. Both of those things are impressive in their own right. But what I have a problem with is training a client with a tool that you call a protection tool, when in reality it's a setup for failure,
Hmm.
or at least a very, very partial success at best. So what we do is we train our dogs to fight against armed attackers, against multiple attackers, and the fight is different. So some dogs bite, our dogs fight, and they sound
Okay.
similar and they look similar, but they're very different. Our dogs will triangulate. They will work in teams of 2 or 3 dogs together. They will engage a person so that the person is not mobile anymore. They'll spin the person, and if the person has an impact weapon and hits the dog will switch hands so that A, the dog is protected, and B, the person with the weapon can't use the weapon on you if they're fighting the dog with that hand. So we put these things into our training. They're not just kind of nebulous ideas. They're actual things that we do in training in order to create a dog that will protect the life of a human successfully against either armed attackers or multiple attackers or determined attackers. And that's what I think the threat should be prepared against.
Yeah, and I appreciate you explaining all of that because I think everybody knows, kind of what a bomb dog does and what, the retrieving dogs or even cadaver dogs, they kind of get that, those working government dogs. But
Mhm.
I had never really understood what a sport biting dog was until now because I've seen all those videos with the dog hanging off the dude's
Yeah.
arm and all that sort of stuff. And forgive my ignorance, I kind of thought that's what a protection dog would do.
Mhm.
But now that you've broken it down, I understand. Oh yeah, you have to go get the dog off that guy. Well, if he's got a gun, I don't want to get close to him. And do I just leave the dog out there? That makes no sense. So tell me what does it look like when a fighting dog has to protect their handler? What kind of walk me through what that looks
Awesome.
like?
Great. One of my favorite drills that I do with Arrow here and a lot of my clients is I will have so some people in the sport world call it a decoy, meaning
Hmm.
the dog is supposed to do a job and you are kind of the distraction or the tool. We call our people in the suit a canine sparring partner, meaning you are going to fight this dog. So it's kind of just different from the top down. So one of my favorite drills is I will take my dog, I'll put them on a leash, I'll put them next to me, and we'll walk around, and I'll have the person in the suit walk past me or run past me, and my dog is just to remain by my side and just pay attention, but be obedient and be calm and be polite and stable, and just to follow my directions. And then I will have that person kind of come face to face with me, and then I'll reach out and they'll stick their hand out of their protective suit. They'll shake my hand. They'll put their hand back in the suit. Our dogs bite hands a lot, which we think is great.
Hmm.
Um, So then our dogs are only to bite people with two stimuli. And that is the first one is I tell my dog to bite a person. And we'll go down that trail for just a little bit. So if I say, hey, go bite that person, um, there's a lot of things that happen. So the dog has to be aware of which person I'm talking about. And if this is real life, not pretend land, if this is real life, sometimes that's not clear. And sometimes it's super clear. So if we're in a crowd of people and I go, Arrow, bite the guy in the red shirt, she's like, who? So um, the aggression in the attacker is what our dogs will target.
Okay.
So we don't just go, hey, there's a person, watch them, bite them. We go, we feel like, oh boy, something's going to happen. And we get our dog ready and we go, hey, and we can tell our dog in a tone that tells the dog, oh, something's up. So I'll say, hey, that person, watch out for them. So if I demand that my dog follow that command and I say, hey, go bite that person, they will go. And even in training, when we have new people in the dog suit, if they don't fight the dog very actively, our dogs will go, they'll engage in the bite and they'll see what's going on. They'll shake and they'll be biting and they'll go, this one's not fighting me. And they kind of slow down the fight a little bit, which
Okay.
is very, very good for a family protection dog. So
Yeah.
imagine what that prevents, which is
Hmm.
maybe it's life. It happens. What if your dog bites the wrong person and the person's like, I don't want anything to do with this. Well, that's good if your dog kind of slows down and goes, are you sure, boss? That's great. That's good for liability. The other thing is it's really good for liability that if there is a determined attacker and the dog bites and then the attacker gives up, we're now stopping additional damage to that person, which is great for
Hmm.
liability in court. We've stopped the threat. Now we will handle the threat differently. Doesn't mean they don't deserve to be bit more, but if you
Right.
stop the active fighting against our dogs, usually they will slow down the fight with you. Okay, so that's path one. I tell the dog to bite. All these things happen. They go engage in combat. So they will triangulate, they'll reposition, they'll retarget, and they'll actually create multiple different damage points on the person. Which, if there's a real threat, that's a good thing. I would rather have the bad guy have a hurt right arm, a hurt left hand, a hurt leg, spun around, dropped to the ground. That's good for protection. The other stimulus is during this drill. Sometimes I'll have the person face to face with me. We'll shake hands. I'll have my dog next to me, and then I will have the person raise their voice
Mm.
and talk really vividly with their hands and lean into me. And my dog, rightfully, will go, "Hey, what's going on?" And I go, "Yeah, I know, but you leave it alone. Just, I know he's being weird, but he's not being violent." So
Okay.
I'm training the dog. Even when people are weird, we don't necessarily bite them, which is really good.
Yeah.
And then I wink and I tell the person to shove me off of my feet.
Mm.
So then the person in the suit goes, boom, hits me in the chest. I fall down, and the dog, even before my butt hits the ground, my dog is engaged in the bite. So those are the two stimulus. Either I am physically attacked or I tell my dog to bite. That's the only time they should be biting.
Yeah.
And again, there's a lot of nuance too, which is for us, for liability and for safety, we want our dogs to only target aggression, not just a person that we say to bite.
Yeah. That
I'll
is.
breathe for a second. What do you think?
Yeah. No, man, that is fascinating. That is absolutely fascinating. There's a whole lot more layers to this than I think a lot of us are realizing. And one of the things you were talking about was liability. So
Yeah.
what are like the legalities that we need to consider if like a family wants to bring a protection dog, into their home? What kind of legal stuff do we need to think about?
As far as I know, very little, but
Mm.
that would be a lawyer question. I can tell you we sell a lot of dogs, and we sell a lot of protection dogs. We'll sell puppies. We have untrained puppies, and then we have basic trained puppies. Then we have our first protection dog level, um, which is the dog will engage in a fight with somebody. Then we have some top tier levels where you can take your dog and rappel out of a helicopter with them and all sorts of things. So we run the gamut. Well, whatever you want to do, we can make that happen. Um, Legalities for having a dog in the home. I don't know how to answer that.
Hmm.
But I can tell you some other things to consider when you're bringing a
Sure.
protection dog in
Yeah.
your house, which is it's also fascinating to me. Imagine buying a super sharp top of the line knife
Hmm.
and just using it all the time and never ever sharpening it and going, "Wow, my knife's dull. These people sold me a crappy knife." Like that's not
Yeah.
how it works.
Right.
Dogs are the same way. Imagine buying a car and never changing the oil and going, "Oh no, the car's not running good." Like the same thing with the dogs. And again, I don't think it's bad intentions, and it's not always necessarily laziness, but I think it's just a strange assumption in this dog country that we live in that I have a dog, it does these things, great. I'll tell it to do this thing, and it will always do that thing. And when that doesn't happen, these mental gymnastics happen where you go, couldn't possibly be me. Um, so if you're bringing a protection dog in your house, yes, our protection dogs are incredibly safe and stable, and you have a responsibility to maintain that training.
Hmm.
And what I do with my clients is I don't train people how to make their dog do a thing, and I don't quote unquote solve problems. So if someone comes and says, "Hey, I'd like my dog to be able to do this thing," and I go, "Great, let's solve that problem." I don't do that. What
Hmm.
I do with every single client is an organic approach where I go, "Oh, welcome. I'm going to make you a dog trainer now, so that you can solve unique problems with your dog." Instead of, "Oh, well, Pat said if he doesn't sit, I pull on the leash this way and then he'll sit." Well, that has almost no value.
Hmm.
So, just like in the lockpicking courses I teach, the value is in the failure and the troubleshooting.
Mm.
So if
Yeah.
I can prepare you to go, "Hey, this thing is not going the way I expected. Oh, now what must I do?"
Hmm.
That is really valuable in life too. And would think about with shooting, with fighting, with all
Oh
sorts of
yeah.
things. It's really
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah, gosh, even in relationships,
Hmm.
that's very important to think of. So yeah. Okay, so for the average person who's going to be listening to this podcast, they may not be able to count on their, Pomeranian to fight off an intruder, but do
Hmm.
dogs in general offer any sort of safety benefit for families?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So in my time in federal law enforcement was mostly spent doing, excuse me, overseas counter drug and counter piracy stuff. So dog world doesn't necessarily apply.
Okay.
In my time in law enforcement, the instances where I had worked a burglary case or a home invasion case where the homeowner had a dog of any type was incredibly small in the
Hmm.
percentage range, like 1%, like really, really, really low. There are some exceptions to that. So something like a family member or a trusted friend usually can still commit a burglary in your house if you're not home and if the dog
Right.
is home because the dog knows them.
Right.
Um, but in lockpicking, when I talk about home security, and in the dog world, your protection is a layered system. So
Hmm.
if you have any type of dog, that will stop a huge chunk of would-be burglars or home invaders. If you have a bigger dog or multiple dogs, that will stop another percentage of could-be burglars. If you have your trained protection dog, ooh, you know what the cool thing is? So I realized it was a really cool epiphany for me. Um, so I've never had PTSD. I don't have any diagnosis. I don't have any stress disorders. But life is stressful, and doing the jobs that I did, it did take a lot out of me, and I'm still, I guess you could say, healing from just being in a really strange field and seeing strange
Sure.
things.
Yeah.
So I had my service dog who was initially for my migraines. She was going to do some detection for me for that. But just
Hmm.
owning her has dropped that level to about half of my
Cool.
expected or my frequency.
Cool.
So I do have a mobility issue in my legs that she helps me with a lot. So we travel a lot, and I found myself in a hotel room one night, and I think she does it in her DNA, but we also have encouraged it where she is very protective of a home or a room that we're in.
Hmm.
And one of her jobs, which I like, is that she will wake me up if something goes bump in the night outside of our
Hmm.
room. So hotels, as you can imagine, especially when you're by the elevator,
Right.
are just a mess. It's
Hmm.
doors opening and shutting all night. And one night I remember thinking, man, like there must be a couple coming and going from their room like nonstop. And I remember Arrow like doing a loud bark and then a quiet bark and then a growl and just standing on my chest while I'm sleeping or trying to sleep. And I'm like, and it's cool because we got into the hotel room and dogs will they'll map. So once we get into a room and I go, okay, this is our room, and I unclip the leash, she starts smelling and looking, jumps on one bed, jumps on the other bed, goes in the bathroom. And I was like, what is she doing? And I realized, oh, she's mapping things out. So
Hmm.
cool. So she'll kind of learn the lay of the land. And it's so weird to me that in every like she's never gotten it wrong. She's never like walked in the door of a hotel room and laid on the bed and we get ready for bed and she points towards the window.
Hmm.
She always gets on the bed, we get all set up and she points at the foot of the bed, she hangs her front paws off the bed and looks right at the door, the hotel room door. And it's just so cool to me that I'm like, who taught you that? Like there's other doors in here. Like how do you know that's the one that
Uh-huh.
bad guys can come through?
That's
So
fascinating.
we're in
That's
bed
awesome.
and she's alerting nonstop,
Hmm.
rightfully. And I remember thinking, oh, like I have suffered with terrible sleep my whole life. And not all of it, but part of it is that I lived my most of my adult life in a heavily security conscious state. So like I was primed that, if the alarm goes off, we wake up, we put our guns on, we go work.
Hmm.
Or if I'm in like a police car and I'm working midnight shift and I'm getting kind of tired and I catch myself going, "Oh my God, where am I?" Like I reach for my gun, I look around, I'm like, "Who's trying to kill me?" And that takes a toll on you, and
Sure.
that has affected my sleep quite a bit. I'm happy and healthy now. It's just I still deal with the relaxing in a state of unconsciousness at night.
Sure.
So I realized, long story, I'm almost done. So I realized Arrow's doing all this alerting, and I'm like, I got my gun on the nightstand, and I'm like, I'm in a strange hotel in a strange place I've never been, and I go, oh, you know what? I don't have to worry about somebody coming through the hotel room door because even if I'm asleep, she will take care of the threat before I can even put my feet on the floor. And I don't have to tell her to. Like she will do it on her own. And I've proven in training that she will do it. It's not a question of I hope she does. I know she will. Um, so I realized that, and for one of the first times in my life, I went, "Oh my God, I can close my eyes now and not have to worry about this problem ever again." And I did, and I remember putting my head back on the. I remember the specific pillow, and I put my head back, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so nice," and lights
Hmm.
out. And so to stop a burglary or a home invasion, and burglaries will happen when people are home too, sometimes on
Right.
purpose, sometimes
Yeah.
on accident.
Yeah.
But having a dog, especially a protection dog, um, it's amazing that it's better than a gun in some ways because you don't even have to grab it and aim it and pull the trigger. It just goes.
Hmm.
And not like we talked about before, even large groups of large men would much rather have a gun pointed at them than a dog pointed at them.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
So
that's fantastic, man. So
fascinating
as
stuff.
yeah, and as we wrap up here, I'm sure you've got tons of stories, maybe some that you can't tell, publicly. But give me something about a time maybe you were with Arrow or another dog that you saw the benefit of having a protection dog. What's one of these stories that you're like, oh yeah, this one time this happened and I saw this. You've kind of shared some of these already, but kind of
Mhm.
close us out here with a story that would really help us understand the value of having a protection dog.
Yeah, I think we gave you a couple of those tonight, or this morning. Geez. Um, I don't know. I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna give you a different answer for a
Okay,
different
sure. All
question.
right.
Um, yeah, lots of benefit, and we had some stories tonight that fit that bill. But the benefit of having a dog for me, it's multiple fold, and it's. I'll just recap the things we already talked about, which is if I'm willing to look, then I can see a reflection of myself in my dog. It's not automatic. You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to take responsibility, and you have to be willing to do hard work to fix it once you realize something's broken. But the value in that is incredible. That's actually, and that's the direction that I'm bringing my company. Joel talks about that sometimes on his podcast and in his platforms, that he will get clients that come to him during a crisis in their life and they buy a protection dog. and they do the obedience training. And through training the dog, the person realizes, oh, I'm slightly less anxious now. Or they'll realize, oh, my thoughts are slightly more organized. And we actually do quite a bit of work with veterans and with charity programs where we'll get a lot of people with PTSD or stress disorders. And they they use the dog as a mirror to go, oh, my dog's being anxious right now. And they'll go, oh, that's because I'm being anxious right now. So if you're willing to look, that is, that's life changing. It's not just like a little perk like that. If someone's going down a path and they're like, this path I'm on is I need a change for a positive direction. This is one of those changes. And that's the direction I'm bringing my company specifically. My company is a little smaller than Joel's, and I think I'm going to be a little more niche. We both do the same things, but he talks about people coming to him in a time of crisis and just being a more healthy person by understanding like consequence and repercussions and responsibility. Like that's the thing. It's not working. I put in the time and energy. It's now working. Oh my God, great. And my direction is I want to use these dogs to help people help themselves more. So I'd like to take the clients that need that little bit of help. And another really, that's right, I almost lost it. One of the other really positive benefits is we get a lot of people that are either single or after a relationship, and a lot of people that have some type of, minor depression. And one of the first things that they call back and tell us after they bring their dog home for the first few weeks is, I was laying in bed and I just didn't want to get up in the morning. And I knew I had to take my dog out to go to the bathroom. And they tell us that there's like a hump, that they get over this hump for like a week or two. And every morning they get up, they take their dog out. And then before they know it, they're moving. They're like, oh, it's morning time. Let's go. So our dogs literally get you moving if you're stuck. So I hope that was
Yeah, man. No,
some good answers there for you.
that is fantastic. So I think I hear your underlying thing here is that dogs are good. Dogs are good. Awesome, man. So, Pat, you do a lot of awesome stuff. You talked about the lock picking stuff, and I know a lot of my people like to do lock picking stuff as well. So tell us where we can find more about Uncensored Tactical, and then about your canine training stuff. Where can people find you online?
Sure. The easiest place to go is uncensoredtactical.com. It's one word, or you can type in the shortcut. It's just 4 letters. UTAC.io is the last 2 letters. That's just to post that in your web browser. That'll take you right to our homepage. On social media, I'm not on every platform, but the platforms that I'm on, same name, Uncensored Tactical. And I link to all my canine stuff on my homepage on my website. And we just have a plethora of options. We sell lockpicking tools. We sell dog leashes. I have an online video course for, I think it's 12 or 16 hours of lockpicking and vehicle entries and restraint escapes, which is cool stuff. I have a book out on lockpicking. I have one book out on my thesis statement about government work, basically.
Right.
I'm working on 2 books right now. I'm finishing another lockpicking book and a book on exactly this topic that we talked about today, which is humans getting better by getting better with dogs. And that's it. You can find everything at the homepage of the website. I'm really, really grateful to have been here today. This was enjoyable for me.
Yeah, man, Pat, I've had a really good time talking with you. Thank you so much for talking with me and my audience today, and for all the stuff that you're doing, buddy. God bless you.
You too. Same. Thank you so much.